It's a small, wonderful group here, but when Roger finishes playing, I always feel like saying to everybody watching, let's hear it for Roger! And picture everybody at home clapping on their couch. That was truly beautiful. Thank you again. And good evening, everyone. Welcome to yet another Supper Song and Praise COVID edition. Before we get started, a few things I'd like to share. One is gratitude for the wonderful and varied speakers we've had. First, I want to thank, going backwards, I would like to thank David Lynch, Father Rick O'Brien, and Mary Nicholson for the last 3 weeks talks, which are excellent, and invite you all to look forward to, as I thank in advance Rachel Black, who will be here 1 week from today, and Dave Cook will be our speaker on July 22nd. And now I will also thank slightly in advance our speaker, Dina Davenport. And it's interesting because what happened again tonight has happened before. Dina walked into the sanctuary and said, if I'm remembering, something to the effect of, oh, it's good to be back, or
yeah, it's been a long time.
Been a long time. And it is a nice feeling, isn't it? And you are not alone, because, for instance, I don't think David Lynch, he may have been in the parking lot for something, an event or two, but it's been a long time since he's been sitting in that seat for 8 a.m. And he had the same feeling of like, wow, it's nice to be here.
Yeah.
And also a little frustrating in that we don't get to meet as a group. But we're going to roll with it. If this is the worst thing that happens to us in our life is COVID, then in some ways that's a statement of how privileged we are in our life, that we never worry about starving or not having a shower to shower in or running water or, the whole privileged world thing that we can easily take for granted. I will mention by way of a request that if any of you know of someone that you think would be a good speaker, we don't have anybody booked. I'm usually 6-7 weeks ahead. We don't have anybody booked for even 3 weeks from now. And so that's why I mentioned Dina's walking in and going, it's good to be back. Hey, who's missing the place? They might just get over whatever misgivings they might have or fear of speaking in public, just to come on in and be part of a tiny but valid and wonderful worship service. And let the Spirit guide. Think, I'd like to hear so-and-so. Now, there's a chance they may have been asked and said a firm no, that under no condition, but it can't hurt to share. Let the Spirit stir your heart. Call them directly yourself if you want to pre-sell them on it, or you can call me, and it's all good. Trust your hunches. We sang this hymn only a few weeks ago, but it's a favorite of Dina's, and to be totally honest, it's a favorite of Roger Pan's and mine. For that reason, we're going to begin once again with Blessed Assurance. The first 2 verses, sing along at home. It's a good thing. Blessed Assurance.
This is
Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Tonight let's do the shorter version of the Serenity Prayer together. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Amen. And if there are those among you who've noticed that this prayer is particularly pertinent to a COVID time, I would have to say I agree with that assessment. So maybe I'm just going to plant that seed in your head. If there's a time in the day where you think, if I'm stuck in this house one more day, or I see another family barging down, taking up the whole row at Smith's, and none of them have a mask on, and you're feeling that frustration, that might be a moment to say, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
Amen.
The courage to change the things I can.
Amen.
And the wisdom to know the difference.
Amen.
Thank you for those 3 amens, Dina. Tonight's psalm is a portion of Psalm 145, where we will exalt God with a happy and joyful voice. Let's do it tonight, alternating by half verse, the first 6 verses of Psalm 145. For those of you, and I know there are a few of you, at home who are looking at the Book of Common Prayer, that's on page 801. 801. Psalm 145, verses 1 through 6. I will exalt you, O God, my King.
And bless your name forever and ever.
Every day will I bless you.
And praise your name forever and ever.
Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised.
There is no end to his greatness.
One generation shall praise your works to another,
And shall declare your power.
I will ponder the glorious splendor of your majesty.
And all your marvelous works.
They shall speak of the might of your wondrous acts.
And I will tell of your greatness.
Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen. I'm so glad that you agreed to speak tonight, Dina. And we'll just say that, since you'll hear this is right, but I will say, Dina's fairly new to the Epiphany Circle. And but whether you've been here 16 years, 16 months, or 16 days, you are beloved. And we're really grateful that you're a part here and so active and singing in the choir. And just a share of a beautiful and wonderful and enthusiastic faith. I will let Dina tell you more about herself. So, with love and appreciation, let's welcome Dina Davenport.
Greetings. I hope you're all doing well.
Yes.
When Father Chris called and asked if I would speak at supper songs and praise, my heart started to race. And not in joyous anticipation, but in fear. I'm sure I'm not the only one who reacted this way. He said that all I needed to do was tell my story. At that point, the only story I could think of began with a priest, a rabbi, and a minister walk into a bar. But I was pretty sure that was not what he meant. So my story begins in a very, very small farming community in northeast Kansas. Robinson had a population of about 350. And yes, everybody knew everybody else's business. But as a child, I didn't find that to be a threat. Actually, it was rather comforting. The community was like an extended family. My mother was a teacher, and my daddy was a carpenter. They loved and respected each other for almost 50 years, before my daddy passed away. My friends and I rode our bicycles until long after the streetlights came on. We picked locust shells off the trees. And if for those of you who know what I'm talking about with this, don't you hate it when you grab one off the tree and there's still a bug in the shell and it buzzes in your hand?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, that's not fun.
Only the Midwesterners are nodding.
Right. And we caught lightning bugs and put them in a jar. They never lived through the night. Church on Sunday morning was a given. I sang in our choir, and I went to youth fellowship on Sunday evenings. In the summer, I went to vacation Bible school and church camp, as did most of my friends. After high school, I attended a couple of junior colleges, and then I completed my degree at Kansas State University. Go Wildcats. Then I began my teaching career. I won't give you a detailed account of the next 44 years. Suffice it to say that I have seen a lot of changes in our educational system, and the pendulum has swung back and forth quite a few times. In 2018, I decided that I was ready to retire from teaching. I still loved the kids, but I felt that our educational system was going in a direction that I just couldn't endorse. In terms of my faith, I hadn't been active in a church family since I had left Robinson. I still considered myself to be a Christian, but I hadn't sought out a new fellowship group. That can be really hard. I know now that I needed to turn that over to God. Then along came my friend Carol Thorson. She was and is a very involved member of the Epiphany family. She never pushed her faith on me, but she always let me know that I was welcome. And if you know Carol, you know that's how she rolls. Last September, I was undergoing a number of routine physical tests my doctor had ordered. And one of these tests was a ultrasound of my carotid arteries. And when the results came back that I had a partial blockage on one side, my emotions spun out of control. Both of my parents had died of heart-related illnesses, and I figured I was gone. I was going to have a heart or a stroke, and it was going to be sooner rather than later. I started obsessing over every perceived symptom, and I spent hours referring to Dr. Google. Not a good idea.
No.
I knew that I had some terminal illness. I had numerous tests and procedures, none of which showed any physical reason for my symptoms. By this time, big surprise, I was suffering from anxiety and depression. I could barely leave the house. I'm not sure which came first, my physical issues or my emotional ones. Who knew that anxiety and depression can cause very real physical symptoms? Carol was one of the few people I was confiding in at that point. One Sunday we were having a telephone conversation, and she was recovering from knee surgery, and she mentioned that Chris was coming over to bring her communion. We ended our conversation, and I thought about it for a bit. I think I was pondering. I called her back and asked if she thought Chris would mind if I came over. She said, of course he won't. During this time, we prayed, and Chris laid his hand on my head and shoulders, and he said, regardless of what medical tests showed and what the results of these were, he felt that I needed to examine to what and to whom I was giving my time and my love. And I knew in my heart that he was right. I began to look at my life more closely. I spent more time praying, meditating, and practicing gratitude. Without the adversity that I had faced, I'm not sure I would have realized what was missing from my life. The Lord had given me a serious wake-up call. I started attending church on Sundays, and there were a lot of days that it was very difficult to get dressed and come because I still had anxiety. But I knew that once I got here, it would be a healing time, and the Epiphany family became my support system. After a few weeks, I began to feel that going to church just wasn't enough. I needed to contribute. So I joined the choir. I remember my first rehearsal. They were preparing for Advent, a big season. All of the songs were new to me, and after 2 hours of singing, I was hoarse, and I was beginning to wonder if I had bitten off more than I could chew. But the Lord said, "Relax, Dina, you'll be fine." And I was, and I am. My takeaway this evening is this. If Father Chris calls you to speak at Supper Songs and Praise, just remember, we all have a story to tell, and no one here will judge you. And first and foremost, you are not alone. Jesus told his disciples in Matthew, "Don't worry about what you'll say or how you'll say it. The right words will be there. The Spirit of your Father will supply them." And he did.
Amen.
Wow.
Go, Dina. In addition to singing in the choir, if you'd like an additional ministry of recruiting all Supper Song and Praise speakers.
It's a challenge.
You know, there's a little something I was going to bring up tonight, and I'm going to mention it. I know I've mentioned before that this service is called SS&P, and we all agree it stands for Supper, Song, and something that starts with a P. And people say, sometimes I think I hear prayer, sometimes I think I hear praise. And I go, right. They go, well, which is it? And I say, well, I think it's just okay to have it arbitrary. They go, well, put it this way. If I walk in and I pick up a service book, a service pamphlet on Wednesday night, I think it says Supper, Song, and Prayer, doesn't it? Well,
Yeah.
In fact,
If you go through the stack, you'll see that some say prayer and some say praise. I print them both, and I even mix them all up.
we just have to get more comfortable with ambiguity. So, far less ambiguous, let's say together the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Go in peace as we seek God, live Christ, and share the Spirit. Alleluia. Thanks be to God. Alleluia. Blessed assurance, third verse.
Good night, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow at the 9 a.m. live stream.